Welcome back to the Morning After, everyone. We are online with a legendary family attorney who has worked on some of the most high-profile divorce cases in New York City. He's known for his 2 best-selling books on preventing divorce and his outspoken advice on how to maintain a marriage or avoid one altogether. Let's make a toast to James Sexton. Welcome in, James.
Thank you so much. We are so happy you're here. And listen, we have, Kelly and I provide you and with our listeners here with a lot of different perspective. Kelly, happily married with a prenup. Me, divorced without one. So we can touch on a lot of different bases.
So we know who drove there in a nicer car.
Well, listen, the prenup has nothing. The prenup has nothing to do with that, my friend. Okay, let's be real.
Or it has everything to do with it.
Yeah,
We're not sure
maybe.
quite yet.
Yeah.
No, but honestly, we have been kind of scouring through all of your videos, and we kind of love you for so many different reasons.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what's a lot for you right now? What's going on?
I really, doing what I do for a living, like I talk about so many serious things all the time that when I thought about this, I really went with something very topical for me in this moment in my life. And that is, it's a lot when people take karaoke seriously.
Oh God.
Because I went the other night with friends for karaoke, and my understanding of what the nature of karaoke is that you're supposed to be like a white dude doing like Baby Got Back by Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Right.
Or like you can't sing and you sing like Harry Connick standards with like a tremendous amount of emotion,
Yeah.
So I always thought like, okay, karaoke is something you do when you've had like a couple of cocktails and now you're like, hell yeah, let's do Leather and Lace as a duet, with my buddy. Like what? And like there were people taking it very seriously.
Yeah.
And they were like getting up and there was like their turn and then they were singing. And for a second, I'm like expecting them to be having the good, weird time that you're supposed to be having with karaoke. And then I realized like, oh, these people are serious. And then I kind of didn't know where to look because I'm just sitting there and a stranger is like with a lot of emotion singing like Katy Perry to me.
Oh
and I'm just looking and they're looking at me while they're singing it. And I'm sort of thinking like, am I supposed to look them in the eye or look down? Like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not having fun.
No.
And I really thought like someone puts the lyrics to a song on a screen and they're serving alcohol. Like this is not meant to be something serious. So I think it's a lot for people to take karaoke seriously. And I feel like we need to just have a conversation where we just say to people, listen, maybe we should make like a special bar just for people who want to be serious about their karaoke and then the rest of us can have fun.
It's called like open mic night or The Voice. I don't know. Go on one of those. Because here's the thing. Here's what I'll say to you too. When someone's up there trying really hard and they're still not good, because karaoke, the reason you go is because you're horrible and what you want to sing, but everyone expects you to be bad, so you're all in the same boat. But when someone's trying really hard, you're right. I don't know where to look.
Yeah, and I also don't know, like, do they know they're bad?
No.
Or did someone say to them, like, oh my God, you've got a great voice? And in which case, like, again, if you have a terrible voice and you just have it in you to want to sing, like, I applaud you. I have to say, like, I applaud people. Like, I live in New York City. So like this time of year, it starts to get like vaguely California weather for like a hot minute we get where it's nice out. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. It's like perfect. Like California's great because you guys just skip all the crappy seasons and you just have one wonderful time.
It's pretty great.
But here, when the warm weather starts, everybody immediately wants to start shedding clothing. It's like, sun's out, buns out, or sun's out, guns out, or, whatever, sky's out, thighs out, right? So in New York, people start walking around and they must have like I pray to someday have their level of self-esteem because they're wearing like half shirts and they don't have the body for it, but they just are walking with a confidence of like, oh yeah, like here it is. Like world, you're welcome.
This is my 4-year-old.
Yeah.
But I have to say something. I admire that. Like I'm not saying this to take the piss out of those people.
No.
I think we should all have the confidence when singing of a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Like I'm all for it, but just don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
Like,
I really
do. Give me warning.
I really do think like the onslaught of American Idol fucked it all up because everybody thinks that they can be a singer and everybody has their moment. And so that's what screwed it up.
Here's one last question. The karaoke. What was your song choice?
I went Baby Got Back. I went Baby Got Back with Sir Mix-a-Lot. You can't go wrong. You're a late middle-aged white man in a tie. And you're doing Baby Got Back with feeling, like with feel, like I was like my anaconda don't want none, and I did the whole like the hand motion, like, and there until you see that, you know what I mean? Preferably 2-3 cocktails in, and I walk up, very serious looking, and then it's the like I like big butts, and it just. Kills. It brings down the house.
Yeah, of course.
Well, and I'm a Celine, and I try my hardest, but I'm a horrible singer, but I work the room. You know what I mean? I walk around the room. Yeah, that is what it is. Love it. All right, so obviously you are known, gruesome in the courtroom, and you, obviously you're a divorce attorney, and you're divorced yourself, correct?
Yes, that's friendly divorce 20 plus years ago.
That's
we
great.
have 2 great kids who are now adults, and we did a great job together. She's been remarried 15 years to a great guy who I'm very happy to call a friend and part of my family. So
I love it. And you obviously have strong opinions on divorce, on marriage. Do you think your divorce has kind of shaped those, or just being the divorce lawyer you are?
I think being the divorce lawyer that I am, practicing exclusively divorce law for 25 years, starting out really representing, anybody who'd, pay me $50 an hour at the time. Like I got out of law school and I wanted to be a divorce lawyer. And I went out on my own 6 months after I graduated law school, which I look back on now and like only the hubris of youth would do that. Like one of my sons is a lawyer. And if he had tried to open his own law firm 6 months out of law school, I'd have been like, are you kidding me? Get your head examined. But I dove into it. And then thank God in the 25 years, I now represent, elite actors, celebrities, athletes, people in finance who can move markets. I went from having clients that were like a cop or a teacher to one of my clients is worth $8 billion now, it's really this. What's interesting for me about it is some of my current clients are really just masters of their craft, whether they're just a world-renowned surgeon or a Emmy award-winning actor. Mm-hmm. And they're as bad at love and marriage as any of us. Yeah. Like it's just great equalizer. Like you can be phenomenal at so many things. And this is still something that we all just step on the rake sometimes. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. And I've been very fortunate that it's shaped my perspectives on love and divorce and marriage, which I think are 3 separate pursuits. It hasn't made me unromantic. It hasn't made me not believe in love. It has made me not believe in marriage.
That was what I wanted to I wanted to ask you. Like when it comes to marriage, you believe in it, or do you not really believe in it?
Well, I mean, what I'll say is this: I don't think love and marriage have very much to do with each other. Okay. I think marriage is a legal relationship. Like we can call it whatever we want. We can say, well, it's a spiritual union. Most people I know that are like deeply connected to each other and very much in love, whether they got the government involved or not, they probably would still feel that way about each other. So I don't think that getting the state involved necessarily was the thing that pushed them over the top of loving each other. Right. So I think it's important to separate the legal status of marriage from the status of being in a pair bond with a person that you say, this is my person out of 8 billion other choices, and this is the one I've chosen. I think that is what fascinates me, is how badly we want that. Mm-hmm. I often say to people that 56% of marriages roughly end in divorce. And probably another 10 or 20%, if I'm being conservative, stay together for the kids or because they don't want to give away half their stuff or whatever it might be. So now we're talking about a technology that fails like 75% of the time, which is a gigantic number, But the statistic that fascinates me more is that 86% of people who get divorced are remarried within 5 years of their divorce.
Oh, wow.
And so that's people that got married. It didn't work out. It ended in divorce. And within 5 years, they were like, yep, let's do that again. And to me, that tells you something about how powerful the desire to have this kind of a connection with another person really is. And that's where I got myself, a couple years ago, where I wrote the first book, where I just thought, like my mother used to say when I was a kid, that it's hard to define intelligence, but you can spot stupid a mile away. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's hard to define a good marriage or a good relationship, but man, you can smell a bad one a mile away. Like when you're out with that couple or group of couples and like one of them, you can just tell like this is not going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so to me, I thought, well, I don't know that I have a lot to say about how to have a strong marriage, but I know a lot in 25 years of doing divorces and seeing every side of every issue that breaks up a marriage. I know a lot about what screws marriages up. So I was like, all right, I can't write a how-to book, but I can write a how not to book, like how not to fuck up your marriage. And that was actually the original title I suggested. But back then they were like, you can't really, it was before Mark, what's his name's book, about like, the art of not giving a fuck or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was like back then you couldn't, I guess it was just sort of a trend that ended. So I just missed the tail end of that. But yeah, I mean, I think my book is about not fucking up your marriage because I've watched a lot of marriages that got fucked up.
Okay.
And I think most people, when they get married, have no intention of divorcing. They really want it to work. I think it's a lot easier to keep something good than to let it fall apart and then try to fix it.
The book you're referring to, is this the one that's like, if you're already in my office, it's too late?
Yep. Yeah. The first book was If You're in My Office, It's Already Too Late, A Divorce Lawyer's Guide to Staying Together.
Yeah.
And the second book was How to Stay in Love, Practical Wisdom from an Unlikely Source. Oh. And the idea of both of them really is, that even though you would not think a divorce lawyer is a good person to give you relationship advice, I actually think I'm probably more qualified than a lot of people you would think would give good relationship advice because people lie to their therapist, people lie to their friends, people lie to the public on their social media accounts, but most people don't lie to their divorce lawyer. Like my only job is to protect you and to keep your secrets and try to help you navigate your mistakes. So I get a very, very candid, honest view of what's gone on in people's marriages.
Now, I do have a question. Now, we have our listeners are mostly, family or moms and probably plenty of dads too, but married, stuff like that. And I want to get into this. Like you say you wrote books on what basically not to do. Before we get into that though, would you say you are working with mostly men or mostly women, or is it pretty divided?
It's a pretty even split. Yeah. I in 25 years of practicing family law, I've represented every kind of person. I mean, I've represented the abused and I've represented the abuser. I've represented the person with substance use issues and the person who's divorcing someone who has significant substance use issues. Like I've represented just phenomenal parents who are fighting hard to like maintain a strong relationship with their child. And I've represented people who are by any objective standard an absolutely atrocious parent and really just want to put the kids in the middle to weaponize the kids. Like I've represented probably every possible side of every issue you could have in a divorce, and men and women equally so. Since the passage of marriage equality, I've represented, gay, lesbian, transgender individuals. Like I've really represented a very broad spectrum. I've represented tremendous number of different religions, Hasidic Jews all the way through, I actually represented a Methodist minister because they're allowed to marry and he was getting divorced. So I've really represented a tremendous cross section of the world. I mean, it's all kind of the same job. It's all the same gig.
Okay. Because I do think men and women differ in how they feel loved, and we'll get into that too.
Of course.
But before we get there, like we were listening to something, I think yesterday it was, and you were saying how you believe in marriage, but you might not believe in marriage without a prenup. And
yeah, I think a prenup just makes sense. The way I parse it to people is that every marriage has a prenup. It's just either one written by the state legislature in the state in which you reside that can be changed unilaterally by the state with or without your consent. And that if they change the nature of that contract, you're not allowed to say, oh, I'm opting out of it then, I quit. Like, I don't like this new contract that you've come up with. Or it can be a prenup that's written by you and the person that you allegedly love more than the other 8 billion other options in the world.
Okay.
To me, I think the best people to make a rule set for a relationship are the two people in that relationship.
Yeah.
And even if that conversation is hard to have, I think if you can't have hard conversations, you probably have no business getting married to each other. Because you're going to have issues if you don't know how to have hard talks. I think on the left and on the right, we can probably all agree that if you put the government in charge of something, you're opening up the potential of a lot of issues, especially since government can change so much depending on the political climate. So when you marry without a prenup that you and your fiance sign, you are signing a prenup with the state.
Yeah.
And you're letting the state make whatever choices it wants to make on your behalf. That's a tremendous amount of trust in a bunch of elected individuals. I just never looked at people who won a popularity contest and thought, yep, those people should be in charge of the rules of my marriage.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what? When we were going through this 10 years ago, and, you know, I had been with my husband for a while before it, but I was still young and very naive of this whole situation. And when we got engaged, we'd talked about prenups even before getting engaged. And I again was very naive and was like, I feel like we're planning our divorce before we're getting married. I don't really love the idea. But then again, I had to look at the other direction and say, well, if we never get divorced, we'll never need it anyway. So like, why wouldn't I? And he was very, honestly, it was, and it doesn't even matter. It was very fair. He was obviously very generous in it all. But I think sometimes when you think prenups, you think it's a negative connotation when you're talking about marriage. And turns out I agree with you. Like, letting you and your significant other decide the terms if a divorce does happen, because I don't think anyone thinks about it like the state has control, and they do. At the end of the day, the government controls that contract. So to make your own seems way smarter. But again, there's just been this negative connotation around it because it sounds like, oh, you don't want to give me any money, and we're getting married, and that's what I feel like the public thinks about it.
Yeah, well, that's the framing of it. You know, the framing of it has been that, and I think that's unfair. And I really, you know, if I get in the car with you and I put on my seatbelt, I don't think you would look at me and go, oh, you think I'm a bad driver? Like, you think we're going to get in an accident and I'm a bad driver? Like, no, you just put on a seatbelt. Like, of course, why wouldn't I? Like, there's a chance. It's not a 75% chance, by the way, but there's a chance we could get in an accident. So, of course, I'm going to put that up. Something, it has nothing to do with you. Yeah. It could be some third-party circumstance that causes us to be in an accident. So why wouldn't I put on a seatbelt? Like, you know, I hope you and your spouse have estate planning in place, you know, like a will. If, God forbid, one of you predeceases the other, or both of you, or God forbid, were to pass away. And, you know, when you're doing that will, do you go, oh, so you're planning on dying? Are you right away? Like, you think you're going to die young? Like, no, look, this is a contingency. And I think something you said that's really valuable for people to hear is that you have to have a conversation with your soon-to-be spouse and come to something where no one feels bad about this transaction. Like, for me, one of the pleasures of being a heterosexual man is that I like being able to provide for a woman in my life. Like, there's something very heroic, like, and a lot of men do. I mean, like, say to a guy, like, can you open this jar? And I don't care what we do for a living or how old we are, we're thrilled. Of course. You know, we love that. Like, we love that protect, provide vibe. And there's a way to look at a prenup that it's like, hey, how can I make you feel safe? Like, we're getting married. Like, I want you to feel safe. Like, I have more assets than you. I make more money than you, perhaps. But I want you to feel safe. And I want to know that when you're here with your head on the pillow next to me, it's not because you're afraid you're going to get less money if we aren't together. Like, I want you to know that, yeah, you could walk away and you'll still be fine, but you're here because you love me and you're here because you want to be with me.
Yeah.
And I think that it's all really about how we frame it. You know, I don't think prenups have to be looked at as a like insurance policy against divorce. I mean, all marriages end. They end in death or they end in divorce, but they all end. And so there's something very beautiful, as far as I'm concerned, about remembering that, like, love is loaned. It's not permanently gifted, that you owe each other certain things, and trying to make you both feel safe in that relationship. I think there's something really, really beautiful about, I don't think you can feel truly loved unless you feel safe. And I think that it's really good to feel safe.
I completely agree with you. And I will recommend too, and it's something that really helped us, was the minute we got engaged, we were working on it because I told him I don't want to get near the wedding. I don't want to have to think about it. Because again, you still like at this moment, I had such a negative feeling about it, and I knew that I loved this man and he loved me, and this is what had to happen, and that's totally fine. But now looking at it as I've gotten older, I'm going, yeah, like why wouldn't you do it?
Well, I'm going to let you in on a secret too, and this isn't a popular one, but I've been a divorce lawyer for 25 years. I've probably done well over 1,000 prenups. I probably do 2-3 prenups a week for most of 25 years. A lot more people have prenups than you realize. Like that's what's very funny is that everybody on Instagram is like, here's us trying the cake and here's us eating. No one's ever like, oh, now we're getting the prenup. Like I've had celebrity clients who I've seen them, they're getting married and they're planning the wedding. And people are like, are you getting a prenup? And they're like, oh, no, we don't need a prenup. And I'm like, well, I have your prenup. You signed it last week. It's in my fucking safe. Like, but their public thing is they don't want to admit that they had a prenup. And I think we have to normalize prenups. Yeah. I think we have to like come out and say, just like we did for therapy, when I was growing up, if you said, oh, I'm in therapy, they'd be like, oh, are you mentally ill? And now when I'll say like, oh yeah, my therapist and I were talking about that. And it's like a normal thing for people to say. I don't know if that's a New York thing, but it's we've normalized it to some degree. Yeah. And I think we've got to normalize the discourse around prenups because the secret I'll let you in on is in 25 years of doing that many prenups, you finish doing a prenup and you usually still have a very good relationship with the person who you represented because, you're helping them through a pleasant transaction. Unlike sometimes after a divorce, the person never wants to see me again. Yeah. And it's just because I remind them of a very difficult moment in their life. I don't take it personally. Some of them invite me to their next wedding, but a lot of times people are just like, okay, man, I love you and I hope I never see you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That makes sense.
But I have to tell you, in 25 years of doing prenups, I think I've had maybe 5 people I did a prenup for that got divorced.
Oh, wow.
Like that eventually got divorced. I think the people that can have a conversation about what we owe each other and how do we codify that and let's sign this thing and that have the presence of mind, like you just said, like, hey, let's do it early in our engagement so that we can do all just the fun stuff as we get closer to the wedding. Like, you're telling me a tremendous amount about both of you that you were able to do that. And I think you're the kind of people that probably wouldn't need a prenup, but it's great because the exercise of doing it, I think brings you closer. It helps you view each other as like, hey, this person's like looking out for me and I'm looking out for them and we're on the same team and we're on the same page.
Yeah.
And I think there's value just in that alone.
What's the craziest clause you've written into a prenup?
Oh, that's a good one.
The craziest one I've ever did has already had some publicity. And that was, I had one and it was enforced by a New York State court that for every 10 pounds the bride gained, she would lose $10,000 a month in alimony.
I had no idea that was you. We were talking about it beforehand.
And I defended it successfully.
I said, I will tell you the craziest one I've ever heard. And I didn't know that was you.
That's it. That's my case.
And I didn't believe him. No,
10,000 a month. And she actually lost, she had gained, I think 17 pounds, so she lost 20,000 a month in alimony. Well, the PS of that story is she still got 50,000 a month in alimony.
Well, here's my question: if she lost weight, did she gain money?
No, no. It was there was a baseline weight at the time of marriage, and then at the time of the divorce, there was going to be basically a weigh-in, like you'd see it like a UFC, match, which wild. I thought was so funny because I thought maybe she would just be like one of the like a fighter who like in the sauna suit sweating it out, like trying to lose. But yeah, he was rich and ugly and unpleasant, and she was very, very beautiful, and they both kind of knew what the relationship was. Like they she was like, yeah, if he was poor, she'd be out the door. And he was like, yeah, if she's not beautiful, I'll be out the door.
How did that become public?
It became public because she tried to set aside the prenup based on that clause, saying that like this clause was what's called unconscionable. An unconscionable contract is one that is so patently unfair that no fair dealing person would offer it and no reasonable person would accept it. And so she was trying to argue that this should not be enforceable, this clause, and she should get the extra $20,000 that she would have lost under the prenup.
But she did accept it, right?
Somebody leaked it to the press.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet her attorney must have, because they were trying to make you guys look like chauvinistic pigs. And so.
Exactly right. A lot of high net worth and celebrity cases in particular, the lawyers will try to weaponize the press. It's not something I do. I'm actually, you would be, I don't think you could ever find a quotation from me in some of the press around cases I've worked on. It'll just say, James Sexton, who represented the husband, had no comment. I'm notorious for not commenting. I do my talking in the courtroom. But I think in that case, like they thought, well, we're going to put that out there and people are going to think he's a boorish human being. And he was like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay. He felt kind of uncancelable. He was extremely wealthy. And, I think he just felt like, yeah, go ahead and put that out there. Like, she signed it. And the court basically said, this clause is disgusting. I don't know why you married this man, but it's a contract, and the two of you signed it. You both had lawyers, and you agreed to it, and it's binding.
And honestly, clearly, you knew the type of person you were marrying when he handed you 100%. Over that prenup. So why would you do it?
I like that you're saying that, because I have to tell you, that's how I felt about it. Like, I felt like, there's an honesty to that transaction that. Like, he was basically saying, look, you're pretty and that's all that matters to me. And she was like, well, you're rich and that's what matters to me.
Yeah,
and that was kind of their vibe. It wasn't like they weren't pretending.
No, they weren't black and white.
Like,
and
it
you
was
put
very
your
black. It was
signature on
very
it.
transactional. It was very transactional.
I'm with you.
And now she can eat as much as she wants. But the weaponizing of that and the press manipulation, we're around the same age. I'm 51. And for me, like, the case 52. That I remember was Donald and Ivanka Trump. And I mean, we're talking to a New Yorker here who it was on the front page. And, I'm in Detroit consuming this, but this was front page news every day.
Lenny Florescu was Ivanka's attorney. And he was one of my professors in law school. He was a brilliant lawyer. He passed away some years ago. But he was at Blank Rome, Tenzer Greenblatt, which was at the time really the top tier matrimonial firm in New York City. And, he had like years later would still tell sort of war stories about those cases.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was a case where there was a prenup and the prenup got set aside.
Yeah. So how does that happen? How does the prenup get set aside?
Yeah. So cases like that, it's really interesting because cases like that give people the very false impression that prenups get set aside. So why bother signing one? And in that case, it actually changed the way that many lawyers, myself included, handle prenuptial agreements, because one of the very successful challenges that they made was they said, well, English wasn't her first language. Now, she speaks fluent English. She had been educated in English, like her whole graduate education had been in English. There was no disputing that she could speak English fluently. But what she successfully argued was that the understanding of the English language to be able to have conversations versus to read a complex legal document are two different things. And they had never had the document translated into her native language.
Wow.
So we all as lawyers learned a really important lesson from that. And I can tell you, in every prenup where a person has any tie to another country, I include a provision that says, my understanding of the English language is sufficient to understand this, even though Greek is my original native language, and that I have had the opportunity to have this translated into my native language of Greece, and I have knowingly and freely declined to do so. And then I attach as a schedule that paragraph translated to their native language.
Smart.
So translate. So they can't even say, well, I didn't understand that provision because I don't understand English enough to understand that provision. This way it's in their native tongue that they had that right. And I've yet to ever see that get successfully challenged in any capacity.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, she ended up being in the movie The First Wives Club, and she delivered that famous line where she said,
don't get mad.
Don't get mad, get everything.
Get everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she did well in that divorce.
Yeah.
And it was at a time where, if you look at him like a stock, it was not the high. He had actually been through some difficult times, and some of his corporations had bankruptcy issues. And so, she got out at a time where, sometimes this happens, like Adele went through a divorce at like what people thought was the height of her success.
Yeah.
And she had to give away a tremendous amount of money. But then she like went on tour, released another album, and knocked it completely out of the park.
Right.
To the point where if he'd been around another year or two, like he actually would have done much, much better. So you never quite know when you're going to count somebody out, or when there are people that, you know, they get divorced at the height of their success or fame, and then things start to go downhill from there. And this person was like, man, they sold that stock at the right time. You know?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I will say, like, I like side with you in a lot of stuff, but I know you have gotten some probably feedback where people don't side with you.
Sure.
And one of the things that I want to kind of know is, you know, do you think people are ever really blindsided by divorce?
You know, it's a great question. I think people are blindsided in their marriages from time to time. I think that because how much you're blindsided is a function of how much you're paying attention. And I think there are a lot of people that aren't paying attention. You know, like if you've ever kind of zoned out and you're just like sitting there zoned out, like staring into the middle distance or like scrolling TikTok or something, and then someone comes to the door, you're like, you know, startled very easily. So the question is like, oh, you know, do people startle you frequently? That has more to do with like how zoned out are you and how much attention are you paying? Whereas if you were sitting there sort of vigilantly observing your surroundings, that person's not going to have snuck up on you. So when someone says to me like, oh my God, you know, my husband was sleeping with his secretary, you know, I was blindsided. You kind of go like, really? Like, cause he like in the span of, you know, 3 months, lost 20 pounds, grew a goatee, decided he wanted to get a tattoo and a motorcycle, and started working late for the first time ever. And you're shocked that he was having an affair? Like that's such a level of denial that you've put on there.
There's signs.
Or like I had a case where she hadn't slept with him in 7 years. And what did you think? Like he'd become a monk? Like what, you know, like it was this. So when someone says they were blindsided, I don't automatically, like I often ask myself, well, how much attention were they paying? Now, by the way, that's not to say there aren't people who are in fact vigilantly paying attention to their marriage, and the person they're married to is a charming narcissist who's, you know, got sociopathic tendencies and is a very good liar and deceiver. And I'm not suggesting, I've represented and people for and against really atrocious people sometimes. But I think most of the time, if we're paying attention, we can see when our marriage is not in the best spot. And I think the sooner you see, it's just like the sooner you know you're getting a cold, the more aggressively you can treat it and go, okay, I need to force fluids. I need to like, you know, sit in the steam room, whatever I need to do. And I think that's the idea, is like just pay attention.
Yeah. Do you think that's how, because like when you're heading towards divorce, or if you kind of notice like what you're saying, you start to notice things. I remember you talking about a story about granola, which like those are, it's the little things that the husband kept rebuying the granola when she was running out, and all of a sudden he stopped. She didn't have to ask him or anything. And correct me if I'm wrong, but all of a sudden that stopped happening.
Yeah. It stopped happening.
And you made a comment which made me giggle. But I'm sure some women didn't giggle about it. You said, well, when did the blowjob stop?
Well, no, actually what she said. So she told me this story, and I found it, I really, it almost made me teary-eyed, because we had spent a lot of time together, this woman and I. She'd had a very difficult divorce, and we were sitting outside of the courtroom on a break in testimony. And I was, you know, we'd gone to Starbucks, like, cause you go a lot of miles with a person when you're their divorce lawyer, you spend a lot of time together. And she was a very nice person. She was an executive, very successful, married to a very successful guy. And I said to her, just making conversation, like I said, you know, was there like a moment that you knew the marriage was over? And she said, yeah. And she told this story about how there was this granola that she liked to put in her yogurt, and they only sold it at Whole Foods, and how he would always buy it for her. And like when the bag was running out, she would just open the cabinet and there'd be like a new bag. And she said, yeah, it just always made me feel so loved, you know, and I never asked him to buy it, and I never had to ask him, and he never like wanted credit for it. Like he was never like, oh babe, I got your granola. Did you see? Like it was just this little thing he did. And I thought to myself, like, that's so lovely. Like that is, as someone who's been in love, like, it's sometimes the dumbest little things that make you feel so loved, you know, and make you feel so seen and important to this person. And maybe you don't even ever say to them like, hey, you know, when you do that, how happy it makes me? Like, do you know when you do that, how loved I feel? You know, because it's a dumb little thing, but it's like a sweet, dumb little thing.
Yeah.
And I was really, it was such a sweet conversation. And then I said, was there anything like that you did for him? And without missing a beat, she went, yeah, blowjobs. And I literally spit my espresso across the courtroom hallway, because she just said it. So, like I said, was there anything like that that you would buy for him or do for him? And she says, yeah, blowjobs. And I went, and she goes, yeah, no, for real. She goes, when we were like dating, I used to give him blowjobs all the time. And like sometimes even when we were first married, I would just like send him out the door with one in the morning, and all day he would just be in like a good mood. It took like 5 minutes. She's like, sometimes like 2 minutes. And all day he would be like, oh man, this morning was so sexy. That was so hot. She's like, and then, after a certain amount of time, like I was kind of like, well, you know what, like when he gets home tonight, we'll have sex, and then we'll both be having fun. Like, why should, and then we had kids, and it was kind of like, all right, look, I'm trying to get this done in the morning. We're trying to both do this. And like, again, like it became more like, hey, listen, we don't have that much time. Like, I'd like that we could have sex and we're both going to enjoy it. And she's like, it just was something I stopped doing. She's like, but I know that it made him feel something similar to the granola probably.
Yeah.
And I wonder why I stopped doing that.
Yeah.
So I thought there was that's why there's a chapter called Blowjobs and Granola. And I'm not suggesting, like I've never given a blowjob, but I think I'm grateful for every one I've ever received. And I recently was at the dentist and they were putting, the instruments and things. And I, as soon as we finished it, I said, I have brand new respect for anyone who gives blowjobs, because having this stuff in my mouth, I was like, really not thrilled about it. I was like, I feel like I have to call some people and thank them for, with humility, just be like, I did not realize, like, that is very complicated, But yeah, I mean, these are, again, that I say that only because when I say the little things we do, I'm not suggesting a blowjob's a little thing. It's tremendous, but
it's a great thing.
These are the things that we do for each other.
Yeah.
That make each other feel special and loved and appreciated. And it tells the person that their pleasure is important to you and their joy is important to you. And I think the more of that we can do in our relationship, if we want to keep it strong, the better.
Yeah. And honestly, to just piggyback on that for a second, I know you're agnostic. I'm a Christian. I truly believe that men feel loved with a physical connection. And like you said, with the person that hadn't had sex with their husband in 7 years, that to me is telling them that, you don't care that they do feel loved. And for women, it's an emotional connection, meaning the granola, meaning the little things matter to us. It might not be as much physical, but you always have to, like you say, please your significant other. And
and the question I get a lot when I talk about that story is, well, which quit first, the blowjobs or the granola? And I don't know the answer to that. But here's what I do think. I think that one feeds the other. I think, I don't know that buying the granola was for the purpose of getting the blowjobs, right? But I don't think it hurt. Like, if a guy would like his wife to feel more sexual and romantic towards him, then sending her a text during that day saying, I was just thinking of you, or, oh, that song came on that, was playing at that thing when we went and it made me think of you, or leaving a note in the morning just saying, hey, it was so fun watching TV with you last night. Like, I married the prettiest girl in the world. What did that take? 30 seconds? And the chances of her feeling connected to you and wanting to please you, I think, are exponentially, like, foreplay begins the morning before, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that's what reality bears out, you know? And again, I think it goes the other way too. When a man feels loved and satisfied and desired and handsome, he's going to feel like the big, strong man who wants to take care of the woman in his life and make her happy too.
Yeah. Like, I feel like it goes round and round. Like, you
100%.
do stuff to please your husband. He's going to feel like, I want to please her. Yeah.
So how do we avoid that then? So is it, traditionally you'd always say that, couples fight about money. They fight about sex. Is it,
family.
Family. What are the issues that you think lead people to get to that point where they say, all right, it's time for divorce?
Yeah. That's really the question, right? Like, and I think when most people get asked, why did you get divorced? They talk about the straw that broke the camel's back. They talk about infidelity. They talk about financial impropriety. They talk about like the big conflict that blew it up, but no single raindrop's responsible for the flood. Like the flood is a bunch of raindrops, and anybody who's ever been married for even 5 minutes has had the experience of, you're having like a very mild disagreement about, the best way, like what the best traffic way to take to get to a particular location. And 5 minutes later, it's like, I never liked your mother. And you're like, wait, what? Where did that come? Like, how long have you had that in the chamber? And how long are you carrying that around for? Like, you were rude to my sister that time 4 years ago. And you're like, whoa, like what? People get divorced the same way they go bankrupt, very slowly and then all at once. Like it's really like a slow burn, and then it just goes off a cliff at some point. And so I think it's about disconnection. I think that when you stop doing the thing or things, those little things that made each other feel loved and valuable, you stop saying the things that you said when you were trying to close the deal with each other, And also when you just stop paying attention and cheering for this person. When couples are like taking the piss out of each other to other people, that to me is the surest sign that a relationship is headed to my office. Like, I think when I see someone teaming up with someone against their spouse in a conversation, or being very and by the way, we've made this very fashionable. Like it's very fashionable for a group of women to sit around and talk about what idiots their husbands are, or for men to sit around and talk about what like cold, loathsome harpies their wives are. And I don't think it's cute. I don't think it's helpful to the world. And I don't abide it. Like, I don't think it's fun. Like, it's just like there was a time where people could say racist things and sexist things and homophobic things, and it was like charming. I don't think that's charming. Like, I think that when someone is talking about the person who's supposed to be like their teammate, they're like their other half. And I'm not saying like, oh my God, like he's such a slob. That's affectionately. Like I talk about my kids that way. Like I'm like, oh my God, this one's such an idiot, But when you're legitimately not cheering for this person and you're just openly resenting them, that to me is like the sure sign. So I think, again, it's all about when people start to slowly disconnect. It's not that short of a distance till you end up in my office.
So it's like communication. When you have that moment where you're pissed 100%. About the sisters' fight, you should be bringing it up at that moment rather than
wouldn't say yes. I would say don't delay. I don't know that bringing it up in that moment. Like there's a chapter in my book called Hit Send Now where I advocate for sending an email to your spouse. I know that sounds weird. Like it sounds like very formal. See, conversation, like I'm very comfortable in conversation because I argue for a living and I talk for a living. But some people feel very confronted when they're put on the spot in a conversation. So like if I said to you like, hey, you said something and it kind of like sat wrong with me and it made me feel, that brings out something defensive very often in people where they feel compelled to be like, well, no, you misinterpreted that and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm a fan when I write something, and most of us, when we write something, we give it a little more thought, usually. Like we were a little more careful in the way we parse it, whereas we might run our mouths a little reckless sometimes. Even with text, I think we sometimes like write it, rewrite it, and then we kind of get it right, and then we send it, at least ideally. If we receive it the right way, if this has become like a practice in our marriage, in our relationship, where we know, hey, when we want to share something with each other, we're going to do it this way. And we're going to try to hear it with love. We're going to hear it as, hey, this relationship's important to me and I want it to stay really good. So I'm sharing this thing with you because it blipped on my emotional radar and it made me feel like you said this thing about my sister and maybe you were joking, but like it felt weird. It made me feel like you don't like my sister and you know how much I love my sister. And so it just rattled me a little bit. And I'm going to try to read that and hear it and not go, what do you mean? Of course, I like your sister. I helped her with it. Like, I'm going to go, well, first of all, like, I'm really sorry I made you feel that way. Like, I totally didn't mean to. And yes, I love your sister. I thought I was making a joke. I was trying to be funny, but if it hurt your feelings, I know that wasn't my intention. And no, I absolutely care. Or, yeah, I do love your sister, but I do think what I said is fair, that sometimes she's a little, and at least now we're having a less defensive dialogue and we can work on this thing.
Emailing is very interesting to me because one of the things, I'm a reactive, I react. Sure. I'm trying to learn, I would say, how to respond and not react. Yeah. I get defensive very quickly. And one of the things that I've noticed when I am upset with Matthew, and we've been working on this, but I'll say, listen, this made me feel this kind of way. And maybe he says, well, I didn't mean like, or like, and it completely belittles then my feeling. Right. And then there's a whole other issue. So I do love the emails. It gives you a second to really think. And also, like, I'm not great with words, but if I write them down, I think I might be better.
Yeah.
The worst time to learn how to fight is when you're in a fight.
Oh,
like, it's the worst time to learn how to fight. Like, so why don't we, as a couple, when we're going to get married or we've just got married, say, hey, look, at some point, we're going to disagree on something or we're going to get in an argument. Mm-hmm. It'll probably be my fault. I'll say some dumb shit. I say dumb shit all the time. So it might be my fault. When we do, are you I need a minute to like process this and digest it so I don't get reactive and say the wrong things? Or are you we got to deal with this right now, I can't go to bed angry kind of person? Because like, let's figure out what we need from each other in conflict while we're getting along. Because that's the time to establish a rule set, like no low blows. Like if I'm in an intimate relationship with you, all my soft targets, man. Like, you know exactly where to hit Matthew if you wanted to. Yeah. Like if you're married to somebody, you know how to reduce them to tears in about 5 sentences if you wanted to. Like there's a doctrine of mutually assured destruction when you're in a marriage where you just like, each other's soft spots.
Yeah.
And there's something so frightening and brave, right? It's only brave because it's frightening, but there's something so brave about being like, yeah, I'm going to show all of that to this person. I'm going to let this person have all the ammo to hurt me because it's what they need to be able to really understand me and love me fully and for me to feel fully loved. So I think that having some ground rules of like, hey, we will never use that against each other. Like we'll never, like with the equivalent of no low blows, like you can get mad at me all you want, but you're not going to curse at me. Or you can be mad at me all you want. You don't put your hands on me or you don't yell at me.
Raise
I grew up in a house with yelling. You're not going to yell at me. If you can't control yourself, we're going to take a minute until you can be at a place where you can speak at a comfortable volume. Can we agree on that when we're getting along? So that when somebody breaks the rule, you're going, hey, we had rules here and you broke one of those rules. Yeah. I think that's a very healthy thing to do early in a relationship.
Yeah, and conflict's going to happen. I mean, we can't avoid it. We're all different people, raised differently, have different parenting tactics, all the things. So conflict is going to arise no matter how in love you are or how perfect you think your marriage is. It's always going to be there. So having a way to deal with the conflict so you don't end up in one of the best defensive lawyers' offices or a divorce lawyer is important to have those rules
I really think it is. I think it's super important.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for your car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Yeah, you have an incredible skill set. And I will say, even though your ex's husband is a therapist, the one thing I've known from interviewing many family law attorneys and now being with a circuit judge is you have a little bit of therapist in your life because there's no way you have to deal with the legal angle of it. But, in my own experience and with everybody I've known, their divorce attorney is doing much more than just saying this is the law. They are therapists in many ways.
Look, I got out of law school 25 years ago, and it was kind of the beginning of real .com stuff. So there was a lot of white shoe firms that were hiring people and paying huge salaries. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't want to be a highly paid proofreader. Like, I want to be like on the ground with my nose in it, and I want to roll my sleeves up and like work with actual people dealing with actual problems. And 25 years later, I still love this job. That's like, awesome. I still love it. I was in court all morning, actually taking testimony on the record. I was on trial, and I still love it. Like, I still look forward to it. It's such an honor, the things people trust me with. Like it's their kids, it's their money, their home. Like, these are big things. They're terrified. Like, they never meant to be here. Like, no one can, in this society where everybody like is so full of shit all the time now and performing on social media about how great their life is. There's something so humbling about like, yeah, we're getting divorced. Like, you can't pretend you meant to get divorced. Like, you didn't, And something about that to me is like, all right, now what? Like, now what? Like, what's this next chapter going to look like? There's a line from a Cormac McCarthy novel, I think it was No Country for Old Men, where he says you get to a point in your life where you've lost so much that it's all you can think about, and it makes you forget how much is still going out the door.
Yeah.
And I think that if you ruminate on your losses, you miss all the things you still have, and I think, I'm not religious anymore, but I grew up very religious, and the 7 deadly sins were always very interesting to me. One of my tattoos is actually all 7 of the deadly sins represented as skulls. That's what one of my sleeves is. But one of the 7 deadly sins that's misunderstood is envy, because envy is actually blindness to like the gifts that God has given you, like failing to appreciate the gifts that God has given you. And I think so many problems in marriages and in our lives, our individual lives, are that we really don't approach life from a place of gratitude, of like, like, I'm so lucky to have a person who's cheering for me, or I'm so lucky that my children are healthy. At the risk of being dramatic, like right now, there's a family, there's a husband and a wife sitting at a kitchen table, and they're going to have to tell their child that the chemotherapy didn't work and they're going to need another round of chemotherapy.
Yeah.
I was like, we're so lucky that the biggest problem we have is that our kid is still using a pacifier sometimes. Like, what a blessing it is that this is our biggest problem, and that's what we're sitting here ruminating on. And so I think that it's the same thing. Like, I think if you can remember every single day that like we really are just so fortunate, even if we get divorced, like we're so fortunate that we connected with this person, that we had children with this person, that we learned something from this coupling, and that years later we'll look back on it and go, yeah, I learned a lot from that, and it made me who I am.
Yeah. I mean, I love that so much. Honestly, when he says therapist and therapy, I feel like I just went through a therapy session. That was so great.
I think it's just because I've been in therapy for many years.
Well, you know what? It's so great, and it's so good for everyone to hear. I mean, marriage takes constant work, and if you don't want to end up in a divorce lawyer office, you constantly have to maintain and communicate. And I think you got that across very well today. I also am with you with the, you got to be physical with your spouse. That's just, they feel loved. You want to feel loved. It's all in the same boat there. And honestly, I loved having you on. I want to leave before, and this is a yes or no question. Okay. Yeah. One question. Would you ever get married if there was a prenup signed again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If it was important to my significant other, yes.
Love it.
Like, my older son's getting married in August, and he's a lawyer. His fiance is a lawyer. They signed the prenup right away.
Woo!
And there was no question. Like, I said to him, like, well, you're gonna have a prenup. He's like, oh, of course. Yeah, we're both lawyers. We talked about that. Now, do I think that they're going to be together forever? I think so. They're lovely. Like, and I'm going to be at that wedding, and I'm going to be misty-eyed, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful. I love weddings. I don't get invited to many of them because I think people don't want the skunk at the picnic.
The curse,
I love weddings, man. I love the cocktail hour. I love all the little snacks. I love anything where it's a good time, But
yes,
I think that I think if marriage was important to my partner, absolutely.
I love it. All right. Well, real quick, where can our listeners find you besides in your office or your two offices?
Well, yeah, that's the worst place to find me. You can find me on Instagram at NYC Divorce Lawyer, and I'm usually walking around New York City in Midtown Manhattan. You can find me there.
All right, James, thank you so much for coming on.
It was a pleasure.
Guys, remember, rate 5 stars, like, subscribe to the YouTube, maybe drop a comment if this episode left you feeling armed, anxious, or anything in between. James, normally we end it with, we'll say have a splash. You say make a splash. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
We splash a little vodka soda splash of cran. That's our drink. Oh, so
lovely.
There we
It's
go.
a delightful drink. That's a delightful choice.
All right, have a splash.
And what am I saying?
Make a splash.
Make a splash.
There you go.
Thanks, James. Have a good
buddy.
one.
All the best.
That
Great
was
to see you both.
fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.